Penn State wide receiver commit Jahsiear Rogers has all of the makings to be a superstar.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
When you're running a 4.35 40-yard dash and have an 11-foot broad jump as a rising high school junior, yeah, you have superstar potential. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch. Every single day we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Brian Smith is back, Locked On's recruiting expert. And since this is a recruiting episode, let's talk about the leaders in job recruiting, LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Again, we're talking about the class of 2026, and then we'll play a game called Flip or Flop to see if Penn State can flip any remaining 2025 targets that are committed elsewhere. Brian, I want to start with Jahsiear Rogers, then go to Kevin Brown and the potential of this 2026 class, the two most recent commits for 2026. And Jahsiear Rogers, okay, at first glance, okay, this is a wide receiver with a lot of upside at first glance, but no, when you start to watch some of the film, some of the tape, Rogers is extremely underrated as an athlete, as a player, someone who runs a 40-yard dash, clocked at a 4.35 at one of Penn State's 7-on-7, one of the summer camps that they were holding for football prospects. I mean, he truly has superstar potential. I can see him eventually making his way into the top 15, top 10 potentially, as far as wide receivers go for that 26 class.
Yeah, his foot speed is the first thing you're going to notice, but at the same time, he's also elusive. I don't know why you wouldn't do it this way, but his high school just throws him a lot of bubble screens. And because everybody knows he's got speed, one of the DBs over there, yeah, they're so far backed off. If it's even a mediocre block on the first guy, the second player is in a lot of trouble. He's not playing the greatest comp, and he just embarrasses guys like he should. But he's running by people like they're standing still. His foot speed is tremendous. It's first step acceleration, too. It doesn't take him a long time to get going. That's an elite football player.
Yeah, the first thing that stood out to me when I saw some of Rogers' highlights from different 7-on-7 camps, or obviously his high school film, is that off the line of scrimmage, because you want to see some comparable competition too. So the camps are actually a little more valuable at this point because I think he's miles ahead of the high school competitions that he's facing out of the state of Delaware. So when you look at the 7-on-7s, the summer camps, and his release off of the line of scrimmage, because somebody who's 5'10", 5'11", listed at, depending on where you look, 160, 170, you're vulnerable to getting jammed on the line of scrimmage. He doesn't get jammed at the line of scrimmage. His first step, as you mentioned, allows him to get great release off of the line of scrimmage so he can get to that fifth, sixth gear immediately and then just create such separation. And then I have no questions about his catching ability, catching in traffic. He's shown that.
Yeah, this is a kid that does a little of everything. Usually speed guys, they run an 8 route, they run a 9 route, they catch a screen and a hitch. This kid can do a little bit of everything, and it's probably more important to note that, okay, he's got the long speed, but he makes the first guy miss, which is always the most important thing. You can't make the second guy miss. You want to make the first. It's pretty simple math here. The first guy misses, and then he hits that accelerator, and he can make a player who thinks he has the angle look bad. He has the speed to beat guys to the corner. You can't practice against that. Either you have that guy on your team or you don't. So it's an eye-opener watching him run by kids. Really, really unique football player.
I want to get the misconceptions out of the way because Rogers, right now, as we sit here in July of 2024, again, this is the class of 2026. I know that we're talking about this, but Marcus Hagans and Penn State really have a massive victory here, hyping up Messiah Mickens, Troy Hune, Kevin Brown, and we'll talk about all of that in the upcoming segment. But Jahsiear Rogers seriously is an impact type of player because Rivals and On3 have him listed as a lowly 3-star. I don't think ESPN even has him ranked still. And I don't even know about 24/7. But it's okay. Why is Penn State taking a verbal commitment this early for 2026 by someone who's either a 3-star or unranked? They don't make that kind of decision. They don't take that kind of commitment unless this player is a difference maker, a serious difference maker.
The rankings for kids, as we've noted on this show, really varies, especially with underclassmen that are from states that aren't known for recruiting.
Sure.
There hasn't been any scout at his game that is like an elite, guy that may be a smaller, that serves just colleges, but the rivals and all that, they're not going to go to a game that's got one kid. They're not. So I don't really care what his ranking is. How this business works when there's a guy like this, once they commit, everybody watches the film. Nobody knew he existed until he committed to Penn State. You know what I mean? Like they just don't look at it. It's the way it is. So when he goes next spring and he plays in like the battle tournament down in Miami, the biggest 7 on, he'll have 30 guys around him trying to get an interview. He's committed to a major program. And then everybody will evaluate him again. His ranking is, barring injury, going to be top 100. I would be very surprised otherwise.
Oh, yeah, he definitely has the makings of a high-end 4-star. 5-star category, again, that's different because if he's going to be in that conversation, he might have to transfer schools. I don't think that you can stay in the state of Delaware and continue to play the level of competition that you do. You're going to have to make that jump to, obviously, the first one everyone thinks of is IMG, but you can basically go to, as long as the transfer rules allow it, go to any powerhouse high school and make a name for yourself, or at least add more power to your name. That's what he's going to have to do if he wants to become a 5-star in the rankings.
Yeah, he could go to one of the schools in Charlotte or Atlanta or wherever and be good, but it's just hard to do it where he's at. And I think he would probably enjoy it. Like if he went to Buford or something like that, playing against really good competition every night, it would be easier to grade him. And I know I'd get to see him too. I'm never going to see this kid play in Delaware. It's just not going to happen. But good for him for being dominant. This is the other point. He could loaf and take a bunch of plays off. He's blowing by guys. He's doing what he should be doing with his athletic gifts. Well,
and Rogers is doing this against the competition that he's facing for a majority of the fall season. But again, this is why Penn State holds these 7-on-7 camps, these summer evaluations, to see which prospects are out there that just aren't getting the recognition that they deserve. Brian, there's footage of him doing this against Ohio State commits, right? Other comparable competitions. So he's not just doing this against the state of Delaware. He's doing this against other Division I defensive backs.
That's the biggest thing, and it's why certain games, when I go to them, like in Florida or Georgia, I know I'm going to see some of my buddies there without even asking, because you want to see like competition go against each other.
Right.
One of the questions I've asked a few kids recently, I was at a little camp yesterday, who are you playing where I'm going to see you go against a guy that's at least going to play at Georgia State or something like that? I'm not going to go watch some running back run for 300 yards against no competition. It's not fun. It's really not. So that's important. And I'm curious to see where he ends up. Maybe he stays at that school, but if he ended up at a bigger school, how he would, acclimate, not necessarily day one, but like he's going to have to change his game some. That'll help him for college. I still think that there aren't going to be any guys that can run with him. It may be them trying to adjust to him.
For Penn State's class of 2026, Rogers is certainly wide receiver number 1. Where he finishes in the overall rankings, again, I see, and what I've gathered from yourself, from other people that have scouted him, that he has top 15, maybe even top 10 wide receiver potential in the nation if all goes well with the way that things are trending in high school. And he wasn't the only 2026 prospect to commit to Penn State over the weekend. Kevin Brown did as well. 2026 class really has the potential of being top 5 in the nation. We're going to discuss that next, coming up after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. It's summertime, which means it is barbecue season. Stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you won't have to choose between burgers and hot dogs. You can actually get both. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time that you shop. Earn hundreds on items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user actually earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use that code Locked On College. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code Locked On College. Today's episode is also brought to you by Factor Meals. Warmer, sunnier days are calling us. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for the end of summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and keto. So if you're not really a fan of cooking, but you enjoy saving time and you enjoy delicious meals, you're going to love Factor Meals. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. And you have so many options. You have over 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week that you'll always have new flavors to explore. So if you're like me and get tired of eating the same thing over and over again, Factor Meals have so many different options that you can choose. And again, you can crush your wellness goals this month with dietitian approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. So head over to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use that code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Penn State now has a top 10 quarterback, a top 10 running back, a top 5 offensive lineman, and we just discussed the potential of Jahsiear Rogers as that first wide receiver commit in 2026. Brian, let's focus now on Kevin Brown, who is playing currently tackle in high school. He's listed as a top 5 interior offensive lineman according to the consensus rankings. He's the number 1 prospect in Pennsylvania. Messiah Mickens is the number 2 prospect in Pennsylvania. The running back commit for Penn State. Both of them are teammates at Harrisburg High School, and Penn State told all of us that oh yeah, we still can dominate the state. Even though 2025 hasn't gone that way, 2026 is off to a great start. But Kevin Brown he's already shown the scouts what he is capable of, and he could potentially be Penn State. I anchor either side, be the blind side protector for the quarterback or be that anchor on the right side as well. He's versatile whether he ends up a tackle or guard one way or another.
I wouldn't put it out of the question. He could play center. He's just a good athlete.
Yeah.
So those things take care of themselves. That's what offensive line coaches make a lot of money to figure out. Just putting all the pieces together to complete the puzzle. What I did see was really good feet, especially in the second level area where he's got to try to find a safety or a corner or coming down on a screen, whatever. He's good in space. That's one of the pure signs of, okay, this kid's not just a mauler. He can go out and he can get on a guy that weighs 100 pounds less than him and at least kick him out of the way. He may not pancake the guy, but it gets him out of the way and the running back scores. That was good. And the other thing is, like, as you would expect, this kind of kid, if it's PA mentality, blue collar, he really tries to bury the opponent. So really good athlete, really strong. He's physically developed. It's a kid that's probably just going to gain a little weight. I don't think he's ever missed a day at the gym by looking at him. So yeah, that's a highly rated prospect. And Penn State's off to a great start in their 2026 class.
Well, I'm glad you agreed there. More on Kevin Brown. I mean, yes, he's currently 6'5", 260. I think he can easily add on the weight to eventually get to 300. Oh, yeah. But he moves so well already for someone that is just a rising junior. I'm glad that you mentioned just the nastiness, not unnecessarily right. It's coordinated. He's vicious from the point of the attack without doing anything that's past the whistle. What I noticed about Kevin Brown is just all the fundamentals are sound. All the basics there. He plays mistake-free football as a tackle. So all the extracurricular stuff, I'm not saying that he doesn't have or not have any special abilities. But when I look at the basics, when I look at the fundamentals, footwork, hand placement, vision, drop step, down blocking, all of the things that come with the basics, You don't have to say, well, he needs to work on this, he needs to work on that. That's all taken care of, and then he can fine tune all the special things.
Yeah, the problem with offensive line recruiting and projections, you don't know how big guys are going to get, etc. But you can see effort and athleticism, and he has both. I would assume, like you, he's pretty thin, as crazy as that sounds for a 260-pound guy. But I think 305 pounds at 310 is about where he'll be. He'll be a really quick, athletic guy on the edge or as an interior play. I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
And he's going to run over guys. He wants to physically leave his mark. How many times is that a bad thing with an offensive lineman? So, I mean, it's really not much not to like. The little nuances, again, offensive linemen never come into college ready. That's a long process. That's a lifelong learning skill. NFL guys get trained. One of my buddies trains some pro guys. It's a hard position to play. So I'm not worried about that. Seeing his eagerness, he'll want to take that on too. So Kevin Brown's a heck of a player.
Did you see the video of him? He was down at a Rivals camp, and he posted, I think it was about a 15-second clip of him jumping out of a pool in between that Rivals camp, a 3-foot deep pool, and he jumped out of it like a la LeBron James, Saquon Barkley.
I have not seen that, but
it's real.
For a guy that's 260, that's not normal, bro. That's not normal. So he's a really good athlete. He's in the 99 percentile kind of deal. Good for him. There's no faking that. I mean, either you can do it or you can't. That's impressive.
Brian, I'll cut to the chase. I've already given my opinion about it multiple times here. Does this have the makings of a top 5 class in your mind right now here in July 2024?
Well, it's possible. I mean, the first handful of guys they've gotten play at Georgia. That's always the barometer. I know everybody gets tired of me saying that. Could Georgia take this kid and you see him playing? Yes. Every kid they have committed in the 26 class is on that level. What's not to like?
Yeah.
Obviously, we're really early here. But you already got your quarterback. That's important. You already have arguably the 2 best players in states. You know, Pennsylvania, it's got a lot of good players, but arguably the 2 best. And you've got a kid from out of state that's going to help alleviate at the wide receiver position, something that's, it's been lacking. They want guys that can take the top off the defense. There's nothing not to like about the class. You just got to continue with it. Starting off, conservatively, this will be a top 10 class is the way it started. I think that's a pretty safe assumption.
If you look at currently right now for 2026, I know they only have 4 commits, but 24/7 on 3 Rivals all have Penn State inside of the top 5 as we speak. Again, a top 10 consensus quarterback in the nation, a top 10 consensus running back, a top 5. I don't know why he's listed as an interior offensive lineman, even though he's a tackle, but Kevin Brown is a top 5 consensus interior offensive lineman. Again, we keep saying just how good Rogers is. In due time, the recruiting industry will catch up, but I am confident that this can finish as a top 5 class. And the reason I say that is because you have all of your primary positions taken care of. Quarterback, running back. You didn't get the top punter in the nation. You got the top signal caller. You got the top running back when you are, one of the places that is the best at developing that skill position. And then you get a wide receiver as well. So you take care of the 3 most important positions because football has turned into an offensive sport: quarterback, running back, wide receiver. And then you get the 2 best players in Pennsylvania. They can do all the recruiting for you. And the quarterback from California, that shows that Penn State isn't going to be boxed in to the region this cycle. They can recruit in California. They can go to Texas. They can go to Florida again. They have 2 prospects in Pennsylvania. So I don't see this class being limited by any stretch of the imagination. And these players will be able to recruit by their brand, who they are as a player, and people will want to follow them and be a part of this Penn State recruiting class.
Getting the quarterback, I think, is the key to that, Zach, because now you know who's going to be throwing you the football if you're a tight end or receiver. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's important. And it's a kid that had offers from schools around the country. Yep. Michigan, Texas, etc. had offered Troy, and I've seen him a couple of times. Really good football player. I don't think they can go wrong with that. Having an LA quarterback in your midst right out the gate is kind of rare for Penn State. Maybe they've never done that before. I don't know if they've ever had a quarterback from California start a game. That'd be an interesting stat, but they're going to here in a few years, apparently. They're doing what they should do, though. everybody's recruiting nationally, at least to a certain degree. Quarterback's arguably the most important position to do it. There are only so many guys that are going to fit what you want to do anyway. You can't be worried about borders. And they still have hit, as you noted earlier, a couple of really key in-state guys, and they're working on others. Mm-hmm. So they're not giving up on Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia area, South Jersey, DC, anything like that. It's just they're going where the talent is, and like Troy was from LA. You get 3 or 4 players like Troy to add to what Penn State traditionally does in the greater Eastern region, you're good. And Cider is going to get somebody down south. There's a reason that they should have a top 10 class conservatively.
Penn State is doing all the things correctly for the 2026 class. They have built a foundation. Again, the dominoes will continue to fall and the rest will take care of itself. Players will want to play alongside Troy Hune, Messiah Mickens, Kevin Brown, and then eventually when the recruiting industry catches up with Jahsiear Rogers, those 4 players are the foundation of a very strong class of 2026. Now let's turn back the clock, go back to 2025. Let's play some flip or flop. The first name that comes to mind, Zahir Mathis. How likely is it that Penn State is able to flip him away from the rival Buckeyes? We'll discuss that on the other side of this break. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have come to an end here, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to or any of us. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want them to. And all I have to do is open up the app, dream up some bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all of its customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for each and every one of us. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And all you got to do is head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. And if you look at some of the lines over at FanDuel.com right now in Major League Baseball, the Phillies are at home. They are hosting the New York Yankees, and they are minus 124 on the money line with a total set at 9. If you like those lines, you can bet them now over at FanDuel.com. Again, that's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, Brian, let's finish up the show and play a little game called Flip or Flop. Is Penn State going to be able to flip some of its primary recruiting targets that are committed elsewhere? And we'll start with Zahir Mathis. I actually like the Nittany Lions here to get this flip done by signing day. Zahir Mathis was back on campus for the Lash Bash. He has a really good relationship with defensive line coach, and that's important when you are a defensive end, Dion Barnes. And Jabri Wallace-Coleman, who's committed to Penn State as a running back, is teammates with Mathis. So I feel like everything's aligning here for Penn State to ultimately land one of the best prospects in Pennsylvania and get a much-needed recruiting win and for Penn State and a much-needed recruiting loss for Ohio State.
Yeah, you can't lose your best player to an arch rival. And that's, he's from Philly. It's a program they're going to recruit. And quite honestly, they got him early, which probably was the biggest jolt. I remember when he committed, I was like, wow, that was quick. So if they can flip him, even if it's November 20th, who cares? That's a top 100 recruit. That's a kid that plays a spot that Penn State's been really good at. Shouldn't be hard to sell it. And you're going to keep him away from the Buckeyes if that happens. That's winner across the board. So I'm sure he's arguably the most important guy left for Penn State to recruit. You could make that argument.
I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and he's got the length, man. He's 6'4", 6'5". That's an athlete that you really need. So I'm curious to see if he takes any other visits besides Penn State. I assume he's going to come to Happy Valley at some point this fall if there's anybody else, because that stuff can change in a heartbeat. But anyway, to make a long story short, I would expect that Penn State puts their best foot forward there.
You know how you do ultimately land a flip and a commitment? You win it against Ohio State at home when he's in attendance for that game. There's no way he's missing that game in Beaver Stadium this season.
Yeah, the only way if they had a Saturday game for some random reason, but I doubt that. So, yeah, that's where I would be if I was a Pennsylvania recruit.
Yeah, when you're committed to Ohio State and you're down to them in Penn State, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. So that would be a lot of fun as a recruit, I'm sure. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, he'll probably be there.
wide receiver. So 2026 is great, but 2025 hasn't exactly gone the greatest. Romero Ison was rumored to be at the Lash Bash, and then he ultimately didn't make it. He's a commit to the Southern California Trojans, and he's out of the state of Maryland. So this is a long way from home. I get it. USC is in the Big Ten, but Ison has always been one of the primary recruiting targets for Penn State. Flip or flop. It's kind of telling, unless he had a significant conflict because he was supposed to be there and then he ended up not being at the Lash Bash. I don't know. If he was really truly that interested in Penn State, I think he would have made an effort to be there for the barbecue this weekend.
There's been a lot of that in the last few weeks. I was talking to people. I had a chance to talk to somebody yesterday about this. A recruit, like, they wanted him to come to a certain school, blah, 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 but they didn't recruit him as hard as he thought they should, and he blew him off.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's the case with Penn State. Maybe they didn't recruit him as early, possibly, but I know they went after him. So
right.
That's kind of wild. It's not that far from DC or Baltimore to get over to Happy Valley. So maybe they just got to keep trying. Maybe they get him in for the Ohio State game or something like that. Anything's still possible.
Let's stay in the state of Maryland. Brandon Finney, who is an Oregon committee's an athlete, defensive back. He can do it all. He could be a wide receiver. He could be a cornerback. He could be a safety. Brandon Finney goes to McDonough High School, where Penn State has seen a lot of recruiting success, and they were leading for Brandon Finney once upon a time. Brian, this one's interesting. I kind of go back and forth with this one because Penn State is not going to stop recruiting Finney, and Oregon has kind of seen this, it's kind of a natural matriculation where they're starting to lose some commitments because they are winning some heavy recruiting battles for some of the best in the country, meaning that other players are going to, look elsewhere. They're not going to recruit them as strongly. Is this a case for Brandon Finney? Because again, they kind of came in at the last second. We imagine there's some NIL factored in there.
Sure.
So I kind of go back and forth. I guess I want to hear your opinion first before I make an actual prediction. I'd say it still leans with the Oregon Ducks here, because I'll just kind of play into the odds, but I say never here. I have more confidence than I would a Romero Ison, for example.
The situation there is similar, and that's the distance factor.
Yeah.
Do these kids really want to spend their entire college career way out in Oregon? I know they play in the Big Ten, but they're just traveling constantly.
Yeah.
Oregon and Washington will travel more than any schools in the country. Do you want to do that? USC will be right there with it too, with Ison. So that's a part of it. And then the other, if Penn State shows that it's going to have a really good year, they beat Ohio State, whether Finney wants to play offense or defense, and I doubt Penn State cares, maybe that changes his opinion as well. And finally, I'm assuming that the relationship's pretty good. They don't mess up too much with the kids in the Virginia, D.C. area. Penn State's been honest. They probably have a better relationship overall.
A name like Kanoa Winston, I think he's going to stay committed to Michigan, and that's a shame because KJ Winston, his first cousin, their fathers are twin brothers, ends up choosing the Wolverines as opposed to the Nittany Lions. Here's another name that maybe some people have forgotten about. He's a top 10 prospect in the state of Pennsylvania, one of the better linebackers in this class of 2025, and that's Cam Smith out of St. Joe's Prep. He's committed to Duke. So now this is James Franklin versus Manny Diaz in a recruiting battle here because Cam Smith was back on campus in Happy Valley for the Lash Bash. And why this is important is because, Brian, we didn't even really get to discuss it at length, but Max, since we last spoke, Max Granville had committed to the class of 2024 and is enrolling early and will be a part of this year's Penn State team. Most likely will redshirt, but he's enrolling way ahead of schedule. So now that takes an edge defender, a defensive end, a linebacker off of the board for 2025. You lost DJ McClary to Rutgers. Flipping Cam Smith honestly makes a lot of sense if Penn State's interested in taking another linebacker next to Alex Tatch, a true linebacker.
Well, that's a kid that's in state. It's a kid that you would recruited at Penn State before the DC left. That's a kid that your staff knows because of where he goes to school. Proximity's in favor. You've got a defense that's as good as any in the country. He's noticed it.
Yeah.
You have to at least be under consideration. Now, maybe he just wants to go to Duke. I have no idea. I don't know the kid.
Duke's a great school.
But at the same time, all those factors I just said are still true as well. So I'm curious, again, follow the visits. Does he visit for any game, Ohio State or otherwise, in Happy Valley? If he does, then there's a chance. Always follow the visits.
He is Brian Smith, the recruiting expert and insider for the Locked On Podcast Network. All of his socials and platforms will be linked down in the description. Brian, I thought this was a fun episode. A lot to cover here with not only 2026, the future, but still what remains left for their goals in 2025. So thanks for helping me out with a little bit of Penn State recruiting chatter.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
Thanks again for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. If you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. For your second listen, enjoy Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussions on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and so much more. That is Locked On College Football, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day.